Good evening. It's Friday night. What are you doing tonight? Oh, you're here learning about policy, sociology, and organization. What about tomorrow, Saturday? Oh, right, we're all here working tomorrow. This is what the devotion to work looks like among some of the professionals I have interviewed. The first two quotations come from women in elite jobs that I interviewed in my book, Competing Devotions. And first up is Rachel, the president of a company. The pace, the adrenaline. Every day the team would come in to do impossible things, and we were succeeding. There were no barriers to what we could accomplish to forward the mission of the organization. Next is Vicky. She talks about rising above her own limitations. I kept going with caffeine. All the strokes were there for me. It was my highest hour. I was working hard and I was succeeding. The next two quotes come from academic scientists Aaron Seck and I interviewed in our book, Misconceiving Merit. The first is Michael, a biologist, who says, "I take work home all the time. If I were independently wealthy, I'd be happy to pay to have this job. The part I like best is discovering things that no one on this planet knew before." And finally, we'll hear from John, a mathematician. "I can solve problems at all times. There is a great pleasure in cutting through a mathematical problem and seeing the light." So in sum, many professionals think of their work as a vocation, a calling. And women are as likely as men to be career-oriented. And as this slide shows, in the US and in other nations as well, women earned more college and graduate degrees than men, and have been doing so for a long time. In fact, women have earned a larger share of bachelor's degrees since my own halcyon college days in the early 1980s. They have reached parity with men in doctoral degrees and medical degrees since 2007. As another example, women have outnumbered men in law school since 2016, yet they still make up less than a quarter of equity partners, the most prestigious and powerful and lucrative positions in law firms. So how does this underrepresentation continue? Despite these significant personal and societal investments in women's education and careers? Well, one approach to this puzzle comes from important insights from social psychologists who for decades have been studying implicit bias, that set of cognitive associations inside a person's brain which can distort how we see others. For example, in US culture, and probably others as well, men and competence are neurally associated, which makes it challenging to see evidence of competence when it's present in a woman. Now, most professionals would probably tell you that bias is bad and leads to suboptimal decisions. I approach this puzzle in a different way, which is by looking not at individual brains harboring something bad, but rather at professional cultures exalting in something good. These shared cultural schemas of merit, which are these broadly shared, cherished cultural yardsticks measuring up worth and value. And they structure not only cognitive associations, but also orient us emotionally toward what we should feel, what we should desire, and they provide a moral compass. They define a life worth living. And those of us who are mentors lovingly cultivate these schemas of merit in the next generation of professionals. So we started off with quotes about the schema of work devotion, which promises connection, purpose, and enlightenment. So what's not to love about that? Well, mothers are seen as having a competing moral obligation, which makes them seen as less valuable professionals. they earn less even when they produce similar quality work. And then there's also a flexibility stigma, which pushes involved parents out of many professions and thereby can create a brain drain. And these negative impacts have a disproportionate effect on women of color, who are often in tighter kin groups with more opportunities and obligations to provide care. And finally, we aren't at our best when we are exhausted. Research shows that knowledge workers can get more done when we work less. The schema of professional excellence is a constellation of traits recognized as the most valued in the field. Among the academic scientists studied by Aaron Seck and me, these ideals include individual brilliance, an assertive, competitive, self-promoting leadership. And relatively devalued are relational skills and concerns about the diversity of the profession. But these are warped yardsticks of merit. In our data, academic scientists with assertive self-conceptions, especially men who are viewed that way, are paid more as a measure of their perceived rock star value. But they're not more productive on average. They receive more respect and higher income, but there's no average differences between more and less assertive faculty in the metrics that academia says they care about: grant success and publication rates. Moreover, these professional schemas are tough balancing acts for all women because they have to act assertive enough to be taken seriously, yet if they're too assertive, they're punished for not being womanly. And this balancing act is particularly challenging for women of color. Racialized stereotypes make them seem as too assertive very quickly. So what can we do to reconceive merit? Just take a moment and think of one thing that you can do in your life or in your workplace. One thing, in addition to your thoughts, as argued by Tilsik, if we write job ads, let's reflect the actual skills needed and avoid that common language, such as looking for an aggressive self-starter or a decisive leader, unless we really want a masculinity contest instead of a contest for the best qualified person. And forget the myth of the lone genius. For example, one study shows that Nobel laureates actually have larger average team sizes than scientists who have not won Nobel Prizes. So we should value interpersonal skills that can recruit and inspire and manage a team. Moreover, research shows that more diverse teams and more interdisciplinary teams produce more innovative research. So we want to value folks who have the emotional intelligence to work with these teams and really make diversity become an amplifier of innovation. Tabot and Taylor, a couple of years ago, published this really insightful and harrowing study of early career scientists, graduate students in STEM, and found that women, but not men, viewed parenthood as something very anxiety-producing because they had been mentored to see motherhood as something fearful because it can be a career killer. That is the culture. So what can we do? Well, I entreat all of us of every gender who has family obligations or care or other important endeavors outside of our work to make those commitments visible at work. Bring your family to work. Talk about your political work or your religious commitments or the other aspects, your pets, whatever it is that makes you fully human. I love this photograph because A, it was taken by my chair, and B, I'm wearing my name tag on my professional-looking blazer, and my son is wearing his name tag on his hat. So in these ways, we can challenge those assumptions underlying motherhood penalties and flexibility stigmas that somehow dedication to our careers and dedication to others are in mortal combat. We can also reconceive ourselves. There's been a few books lately about accepting our imperfections, self-kindness. And this is great advice, but sometimes the problem is not ourselves, but it's the culture. And I encourage us to challenge the norms, to renounce the cult of work devotion. Refuse to let work cannibalize your own energy and your personal relationships. Instead, nurture them. So I was reading this literature and writing on this topic, but I didn't really believe it. Spending more time in non-work endeavors, how is that going to help me publish more research articles? But my son really wanted to get a dog, and I didn't want to be a hypocrite, so I agreed. And we adopted this high-energy canine. And so now my teenage son and my now teenage dog daily provide examples of challenging normative expectations. So in conclusion, let's reconceive merit and devotion for the sake of our organizations, our society, and for ourselves and our families. Thank you.